Since I was late to the punch getting the DJI Osmo Action 4, I never really got a chance to actually review it. But today I have the newly released DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro, and I'm going to do something a little different, for me at least. I'm going to film this whole video with the Action 5 Pro and the Action 4 side by side. This should give us a thorough comparison of everything these two cameras have to offer. Now let's see what new features the Action 5 has that's giving it that Pro status. For starters, on paper, it really doesn't look like they changed much from the Action 4, but there are a few things that really stand out, starting with the new next-gen 1/1.3-inch CMOS sensor, which is the same size as the Action 4, but DJI claims this new sensor produces 13.5 stops of dynamic range compared to the 8 stops of the older sensor. We'll see if we can actually see the difference in the sample footage coming up. Then as we look at the back of these two cameras, you'll notice the Action 5 has a new larger, brighter OLED display, which is a priceless upgrade if you spend most of your time shooting outdoors in the bright sunlight. Next, we have a huge jump in photo resolution for the camera on the Action 5, going up to 40 megapixels compared to the 10 megapixels of the Action 4. I rarely use the photo option on an action camera, but this might make it worth a try. For everyone using this camera for diving, this is a pretty cool feature. The Action 5 displays the water depth and altitude, it has a built-in pressure gauge, and it starts and stops recording when entering or exiting the water. Along with that, it has a rating of 20 meters depth without the case over the 18 meters of the Action 4. The next big update is the new Super Night Mode, which if you thought the Action 4 already had a significant improvement in low light performance, then let's see what happens when DJI adds a little AI to the mix here. And finally, on the list of how they do it, DJI added a tracking feature to a camera without a gimbal. This is basically the same method as scaling up your footage in post and adding keyframes to create movement in a static clip. I'm really curious to see how this feature works. Lastly, one of the specs that really stands out to me is this. The Action 5 is giving us 47 gigs of built-in storage use as a backup if we forget the SD card or if we fill it up during recording. Personally, I'd like to see this feature in all of my future cameras. Just a quick note, I delayed this video for a little while because DJI almost always puts out a couple firmware releases after they put out a new camera. So this review is going to have footage samples of the latest changes, which includes the bitrate fix, so you can now shoot at the highest bitrate and not worry about losing quality in your videos. In addition to the higher bitrate, DJI tweaked the night super quality mode, giving us even more detail in the darker settings, along with offering enhanced 4K 30 performance and 4K 60 in night mode. Improved stabilization was just added for even smoother footage while attaching the camera to a moving vehicle or in extreme sports scenarios. High-resolution 4K video outlet via your Type-C cable is now available for viewing on a larger screen, monitor, or TV. We now have a wide-angle lens mode, which is added to the settings for use with the new wide-angle lens attachment that's out. And a pre-recording function of 2 to 5 minutes is added to the shooting modes menu, which is nice to always run this just to make sure you don't miss anything in your shot. With all that said and done, let's get to the side-by-side comparison, starting with... Vlogging with both these cameras should look pretty similar, but the difference in dynamic range in the Action 5 should give us a little more detail in the shadows in our face and control the highlights a little better. Let's go in and out of the shadows here and see if we can tell a difference between the two cameras.
You'll notice the Action 4 on the left is a little overexposed in the highlights and the shadows are pretty saturated, while the Action 5 on the right seems to have a smoother transition between the two. The Action 5 is also giving us nice sharp footage without the typical over-sharpened action camera look. You're going to see the same difference in exposure while walking with both the cameras handheld. Let's see if we can tell the difference with the upgraded RockSteady mode on the Action 5. You're always going to get some of that up and down movement when you're walking with the cameras, but I think the footage looks great for both of them. This static shot in auto just shows the Action 4 is a little too sharp and the highlights are blown out once again, but in this bright sunlight, even the Action 5 is looking a little overexposed. The time-lapse mode on these two cameras is excellent and the footage looks great on both. I do like how the Action 5 has a little more cinematic feel to it and how the clouds blend in with the sky nicely. The overall scene just looks a little more natural with the Action 5, but as far as a standard time-lapse goes, either of these cameras will work just fine. The new subject tracking feature is only available in the Action 5, but I thought it'd be nice to see the camera movement keeping the subject in frame with the Action 5 while it goes out of frame with the Action 4. This sample is in vertical format, but don't worry, it's also available in 16:9 horizontal format. This feature is going to add some nice smooth camera movements to your footage while shooting solo. Typically, you won't see much of a difference in something like a hyperlapse mode, but I was surprised to notice a lot more detail in the Action 5 footage with a little more accuracy in colors. It's hard to really focus on anything when it's moving 10 times speed, but you will notice a difference in the detail on the bike's display screen, along with the passing cars and landscape. The slow-mo setting is the fastest way to get some slow motion footage in your video. The Action 5 gives us 32 times super slow motion at 4K right out of the camera, whereas the Action 4 gives us, I believe, only 8 times slow motion. To get the best cinematic results out of either of these two cameras, you're going to want to set them in Pro mode along with the D-Log-M color profile. In order to set the proper exposure, you'll most likely need a set of ND filters along with access to a Rec. 709 conversion LUT for precise color grading in post. All of this, along with a nice sturdy tripod, will get you professional cinematic results right out of your cheap little action camera. Anytime a camera comes out with something like a night mode or a super night mode in this case, there's going to be all kinds of debate whether it's good or worthy of such a title. Just setting the cameras to night mode with everything in auto takes a lot of guesswork out of trying to get good low-light footage, and DJI is still updating firmware and adding AI to try and dial in their night mode even better. All this sample footage is just selecting night mode and running the cameras in auto. Personally, I think I can get better results setting the cameras manually in D-Log-M and edit everything in post. Of course, this is going to take a lot more time than you might want to put into your project. Two of these samples are from the cameras being mounted on a moving vehicle, which is going to instantly interfere with the focus and quality of the footage. But I wanted to see how well these upgrades helped in situations like this. One thing I noticed in my sample footage is the Action 5 handled the contrast and exposure from the lights, making it look nice and smooth without many blowouts in the exposure. Unfortunately, in order for this to happen, we lose a lot of detail in the footage, replaced by some very obvious blurry areas. Like I mentioned, this can be avoided by setting the cameras to Pro mode and manually adjusting the ISO and shutter speed. The night mode and super night mode both work great and overall turn out some very impressive footage.
Looking at the comparison with these two cameras, it's obvious that they both make great action cameras. But the Action 5 is starting to do something that gradually puts it ahead of all the other action cameras out on the market. The image quality coming out of the Action 5 is more cinematic with less oversaturated and mechanical movements. Now you can get the same look with the Action 4, but it seems like there's a lot less work in post with the Action 5. Another thing I like about the Action 5 is the footage matches up really well with the Osmo Pocket 3, which I've been using a lot since it came out about a year ago. I plan on doing another video with these two cameras working side by side, but until then you can check out this video here that covers pretty much everything that the Osmo Pocket 3 has to offer.